What's happening, people? You are now locked into the J&J Boxing Podcast. I'm Jordan Henderson. I'm here with Aaron Joshua. We're going to break down some boxing news, results, and we're going to get into this. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is a classic, potentially a classic that just occurred last week, and that is Fabio Wardley versus Frazer Clarke, which ended in a draw. What are your thoughts on that fight? Did it go how you expected it to go? Who do you think a draw was a fair result? And if they were to rematch, what are your thoughts on how that would go?
So my thoughts on the fight, like you said, modern day classic. Originally I was picking Frazer Clarke to win, and not only that, I thought he would stop Fabio Wardley. I think I was in the minority picking Frazer Clarke. I think people were looking at his previous fights. He kind of labored in those fights, didn't really look impressive, but I was looking in his amateur experience. Although he wasn't the best amateur, look who he's been in the ring with. All the guys you're seeing now in the top 10, he's faced the ring in amateurs. So I was picking experience over athleticism. But the fight obviously didn't go how I thought. I thought that Frazer Clarke just did enough. But out of the two, I think if I was Frazer Clarke, I'll be a bit more annoyed that I lost that fight than Fabio Wardley. I feel like Frazer Clarke lost his shape in that fight, to be honest with you. If he kept it simple like he did in round two, just jabbing him, I think he could have made it an easy night. But he kind of let Wardley in. But that's my thoughts on the fight. Just a basic preview. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we really did see in the first round how Frazer Clarke could have made it an easy night's work, just picking him off with the jab. Real ABC boxing. I feel like when you come up against someone who is raw but has some attributes, you don't give them the only chance they have to win the fight. So I feel like what Frazer Clarke did at the start was real good, just popping the jab out. And he could have worked off that jab, and then he could have just made it a real easy night's work with just simple boxing. But he got drawn into a dogfight because I feel like whenever Fabio Wardley put it on Frazer Clarke, his defense was actually quite responsible, but then he felt he had to come back with something. And this is something that when I first started boxing, I always used to do this. If someone hit me with a good shot, I felt I had to hit them with a good shot straight away. And then some of the more experienced guys pulled me to the side and were like, don't do that. If someone gets you with a good one, yeah, that's cool. But let the opportunity open itself up to you. Because if you go looking for it, then you can walk into trouble. And I feel almost like Frazer Clarke moved away from that. And every time he got put on him, whenever Fabio Wardley put it on Clarke, Clarke felt he had to put it on Wardley. And although it made for entertaining spectacle, on the other hand, it gave Fabio Wardley a doorway back into the fight, because if you
Exactly.
watch the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
three rounds, you could see the blueprint that Frazer Clarke had to win the fight. But yeah, entertaining, man, entertaining stuff. I'm not complaining. I feel like you know, Fabio Wardley deserves a world of credit just for the simple fact that he walked out with a draw against a guy who Olympic bronze medalist, and this guy's coming off a few white collar, so he deserves a world of praise for that. Have you got any closing thoughts with regards to that fight?
Yeah, like I say, if I was out of the two, I think I'd be a bit annoyed more if I was Frazer Clarke. But two facts, like you said, you're amateur, not an amateur standout, but a solid amateur, and you should really be taking care of someone like Wardley. I think Wardley was fighting in bursts in that fight. I think if you just kept a solid jab, worked for 2 minutes, let Wardley had his burst, you would have still edged around. So I think if they were going to rematch, I'll be picking Frazer Clarke to win. I think he'd be a bit more smarter. I think he needs to lose a bit of weight, to be honest with you, because he's not fast as it is. He's kind of like lumbering around the ring. I think he needs to lose a bit more weight. And one closing point for me, I think in terms of both of them, don't think they're ready for European level yet. That goes for both of them. I think the current EBU champion, it might be vacant, but I think the last one was Riyad Mehri when he beat Tony Yoka. So I would be picking Riyad Mehri to beat both of them, to be honest with you. Maybe not Clarke, but Fabio Woodley, yeah, I think so. But yeah, I think they need to run it back. For that's the biggest fight for both of them, and we'll see who goes on from there.
Yeah, for real. I feel like sort of in the closing points, that fight took more out of Wardley than it took out of Clarke. And I
Yeah,
feel
yeah, yeah.
like Clarke would start as a favorite for me if that fight was to be run back, because I think that the nose is a problem for Wardley. I think it's only going to get worse. I think that Wardley is going to accumulate more and more damage because of his lack of amateur experience, and therefore he gets caught a lot. I think that's going to start to deliver a lot of wear and tear on him, and I can imagine he's getting hit a lot in sparring as well. Um, I would be picking Frazer Clarke to win the fight. Now, one thing about Frazer Clarke is he looks like he could really turn into an Otto Wallin of the scene, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because he really is the epitome of solid, but no special effects. You don't look at anything that Frazer Clarke does and think, wow, he doesn't blow you away with anything. So he's one of those guys, in my opinion, who's gonna, if you're on an off day, then he could beat you very well. We're talking when the upper echelons of the heavyweight division. If you're not on your A game, yeah, he could dare to beat you. But if you're on your P's and Q's, you're gonna walk out with a W. That's how I see Frazer Clarke's story ending, him being that type of fighter. Fabio Wardley, I think that I'm still waiting for it to happen. At some stage, he's going to get knocked out in the first or second round by a real rookie mistake. Just for the fact that no fault of his own, just for the fact that he hasn't got that amateur experience. I just feel like that's going to happen at some point. Um, I don't. It wasn't this fight. You could see how it could have been this fight because he got caught with a big right hand in the first round. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And like you say, Frazer Clarke is not the biggest power puncher, but if Fabio Wardley does make those mistakes against a big puncher, doesn't matter how good your chin is, you've seen it on many occasions now, you will get knocked out.
yeah. So moving on from that fight, let's move on to the entertaining return of Alan Babbage. He stopped Steve Robinson. Um, Boy, Steve Robinson, he's tough, but I think that he needs to sit down with his team and think about what he wants to do next because he has no defensive awareness. What are your thoughts on that fight?
So Alan Babbage did what Alan Babbage was supposed to do. To be honest with you, I always thought Alan Babbage was crude in it, but I did think he had a bit more power, and it is a bit concerning that he couldn't take Robinson out with the amount of times he landed flush. Like I don't think he missed Robinson. Every time he threw, he landed. So Alan Babbage is a small heavyweight. He's smaller than me. He's what, 6 foot, just under 100 kilos. Like he's a very, very small heavyweight. Like if he really trained, he could make cruiserweight. But I think heavyweight is a division for him because the skill levels are probably lower at heavyweight, so he's got more of a chance. But regarding that fight, I think the British Boxing Board of Control need to have a real good look at Robinson and see if he even gets a license because it's not even like he can become a journeyman because journeyman, their skills might be lacking, but they've got top defense. At heavyweight, you cannot be taking those flush punches by any fight, especially the bigger guys. Babbage is tiny, but if you're gonna step in with someone who's a bit bigger, that's that's a big risk. So like you said, I think they need to take a big look at Robinson and be like, it's up to you. Obviously, I can only advise you, but you either work on your defense or I'm not gonna say retire. I ain't got the right to, but you have to take a big look.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the thing with the journeyman, the point you raise about the journeyman is that a lot of these journeymen aren't trying to win. Robinson is trying to win, and that's what's
Yeah,
landing him in trouble. A lot of these journeymen could win British titles, believe it or not, could win area level titles there, but they choose not to. They're just tucking up and riding the punches and just getting through it. Robinson's not trying to get through it. And as you said, journeyman, a lot of them, they have some of them probably have better defense than like the British or like European champions, some in some instances, because that's all they're doing.
yeah.
Steve Robinson has no defense and he's just taking punches flush. And I think that that is a real cause for concern. Alan Babbage, I don't think that this cements his return at all.
At
I think
all,
that
at all.
I think that this is just an opponent who wasn't Steve Robinson got no leverage. So I heard apparently Babbage is saying, yeah, he can take a punch and he's confident in that because of that fight. Steve Robinson never hit him with anything powerful. I think Steve Robinson, I've seen him hit harder than that before, like against Nick Campbell, but I think because he couldn't get the extension because Babic was
Yeah,
just like all over him. Um, I think that there was no, he never got hit with any real power in that fight. I think that Alan Babbage really and truthfully, yeah, he's entertaining. It was good to see him back doing what he does, but I think again, he could get beaten probably by, honestly, I know people laugh. I think Dave Allen on top form probably beat him.
to Alan Babic.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I agree. I don't rate Babish at all. Like, I don't rate him at all. And like I say, it's a matter of time. But with Babish, what you have is a fighter that could you can put on an undercard and put him in a area level slash English level fight, and he might not win it, but he'll make it entertaining.
yeah. And that's what entertaining fights are. That's why we talk about Alan Babish, truth be told, because he's entertaining. Um,
Mm.
you know, I want to talk about the fact that Dubois and Hrgovic might be fighting. What do you make of that fight if it gets made? I think it's more interesting than many people think.
You know, I've been banging the drum for Hrgovic for a long time. This was even after he fought Zhang. I took positives from that fight in terms of he took big shots from Zhang. We've seen what Zhang has done to people when he hits them clean on the chin. Dropped Joseph Parker with a nothing shot. Knocked out the juggernaut Joe Joyce, who's supposed to have an iron chin. He landed about 50 clean power shots on Hrgovic. Hrgovic was hurt, but he didn't look out on his feet. He looks more disinterested than out on his feet. So I think with Hrgovic, right, what you have is someone that's not really motivated due to the level of his opponents. But as soon as he steps up, I think you'll see. I think against Dubois, I think a lot of people might even have Dubois as favorite. Me personally, not at all. Like I think Hrgovic will stop Dubois within 6 to 8. I think Dubois is too stiff. I think I just think he'll get not bullied, but I think Hrgovic's big jab will cause him a big problem. I think Dubois doesn't like people with a good jab. We've seen it against Usyk. We've seen it against Joyce. Hrgovic kind of fights like a commanding fighter, and I think the pressure will be too much for Dubois. When I mean stoppage, I don't mean knocked out, sprawled on the floor, but a corner stoppage or Dubois quits or the referee stops it. I see that as a one-sided fight, to be honest with you. I think I'm in the minority.
Yeah, I think that it's very plausible that happens. Listen, I think Dubois, people saying, yeah, he passed the gut check and he proved it. I don't think so because I'm not saying he has no heart. I'm just saying I don't think beating Jerome Miller in the way that he did proves that the Dubois and Joe Joyce is behind him. I don't think so. I think push came at this stage, push came to shove. I think that Dubois potentially might quit the same way he did against Joyce and Usyk. He needs to prove it one more time to me for
So do
me to
I.
be
Yeah, that's what I'm
convinced.
saying. Like even
Um,
when Jerome Miller came back on his comeback, he didn't look good. He looked terrible against Bracamonte. He looked terrible against Lucas Brown. Jerome Miller couldn't move in there. Like I don't think Jerome Miller didn't pose enough of a threat to Dubois. And even in that fight, if you look round 3, round 4, Dubois didn't unravel, but he looked very uncomfortable. So I think Frank Warren's jumping the gun. I think he wants Dubois to fight Joshua. Therefore, he wants to put Dubois in the position if he beats Hrgovic. You know they can make that fight in the UK. But I think I think Hrgovic is going to deal with Dubois, and I think he'll stop him.
Fair enough, fair enough. I think there's a very high chance that that happens. Um, let's talk about the return of Matmadov. Um, do you think where do you think Matmadov's ceiling is? Because a lot of people were hot on him. And do you think that against Junior Fire it's a guaranteed win? Because I think now fighters, that when a puncher is undefeated, people are defeated before the ring, even before the bell goes. I mean, I remember Anthony Joshua versus Eric Molina. Eric Molina was essing himself at algorithm, but he lost before the fight even begun. Like
Mm.
when a puncher with 100% KO ratio, undefeated, a lot of fighters are finished before the bell goes. But it's when fighters start to pick up a few losses, as unless you're Mayweather, you're going to pick up losses. You go the distance a few times, and all of a sudden, fighters have got a little bit more ambition against you. Um, and like with Matmadov, do you think opponents now, even potentially Junior Far, are going to give it a bit more of a go? Um,
Well, going on to that point, to be honest with you, it could actually be a benefit. I think if they don't respect you as much, they leave themselves a bit more open. It won't be as cagey. I think we've seen that with Joshua's opponents. Look at Pulev. He came straight at Joshua thinking this was after the Ruiz saga. So he's obviously very confident, got himself knocked out. Even in Garnu, in his head, he's thinking, if I beat Fury, and he goes with the media narrative about Joshua. So I do think potentially it could be a positive, but also it could be a negative in terms of they could bring an extra 10% in themselves and they could generally box smart and win. I think Matmadov is Matmadov, right? Big guy, strong guy, hasn't got the best boxing ability, but if you stand right in front of him, he will knock you out. But I think someone slick could deal with him, but I don't really rate his boxing IQ. I said it before he lost against Takam. That was a big red flag to me because Takam wasn't the same fighter. But it's interesting. Junior Farr isn't the worst opponent to come back to be honest with you. You saw what Junior Farr did with Frank Sanchez. Didn't necessarily win rounds, but made it a bit awkward. So yeah, I'd just say Junior Farr punch distance is a bit suspect. So if Makhmudov does land early, he could get him out of there. But I'm not complaining about combat fight, considering the way he lost. Yeah, I think that's a good combat fight to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's a solid comeback fight in all honesty. And I think Farr will give it a go for a little bit now. I think after seeing that, he might target that body. Um, Now, the last thing I want to talk about is FA Ajagba versus Guardia Vianello. I personally can see Vianello bagging some early rounds here, but what's your take on this fight? I think it's actually quite interesting, this one.
I think it's interesting, like you said, I can see Vianello bagging the early round just due to Ajagba's stiffness, really. But I would say he's loosening up a little bit. I think Ajagba's jab's got a lot better, but he still has that bit of a stiffness against him. But Vianello's defense is a bit leaky. We saw against Johnny Rice. Although Johnny Rice is a good boxer, I would say that. But we did see Johnny Rice hit him clean. Obviously, won the fight. But I think that's an interesting fight. I think, like we've mentioned before, I can see what Top Rank are doing with Ajagba. I feel like they're feeding him all these prospects and it's sink or swim. You beat them, you stay. As soon as you lose, you're gone. Because I don't really know what Top Rank can do with a Jaguar. Like he's not in the title contention. He needs to get a fight the same way Caballero got a fight with another contender. It has to be that to put yourself in because you're not going to get elevated in the rankings. So with Top Rank, I think they've low-key had enough of him, but they're not going to feed him too high. But like I say, every prospect, if you win, you win. If you don't, you don't. Because I feel like against Kozabutsky, Top Rank set him up to lose that.
I don't think they like, for whatever reason, it's almost like they're really trying to go hard on the jabber. But the flip side of that, he's actually coming out with a pretty solid resume.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I think out of the not contenders, but prospects, he's got by far the best resume.
and it's because they're trying to sell him up. So he's actually maybe profiting from that in terms of his fight game. But this fight here with Vianello, I think the Vianello could bag some early rounds, but I think that eventually a jabber will catch up with him. And I always felt Vianello was a bit fragile. So I think that will probably play out in this fight. But FA Jabba, I want to see FA Jabba against the Dubois. Against I don't know, some of the up and comers like the Australian prospect, Hooney.
Justice
Um,
Huni, yeah.
I want to
Yeah,
see him, against Anderson, although I think people are going to be more careful managing Anderson now. Um, yeah, I think FA Jab, but he could pull out some wins. I'm not saying he'd be all of them, but I think he could pull out some wins. He's becoming more and more of a solid contender.
I agree.
So yeah, I think for today that's everything. We when the fights start coming off, Usyk versus Fury, that'll be when that's coming
Haney
near. We need to
Garcia.
be Yeah, we need to be jumping on
Yep,
these because and I'm really excited and intrigued for Fury versus Usyk because the bookies started off with Fury as a favorite, and now Usyk's a favorite before a glove's even been thrown. So that just shows you the mental side of things with Tyson Fury. And also, I think that there's so much to talk about with Fury versus Usyk. Some things being, is Fury the same? Has Usyk lost a step? If so, how much? Fury's punch resistance, the Ngannou fight, what does that mean? There's so much to talk about with Fury Usyk. It's intriguing. I just wish more people were interested in it. I know obviously Joshua's your cousin, but it's crazy how more people are interested in Joshua versus Ngannou than they are for Fury Usyk. And I would say that because no one's talking to me, no one's
no, yeah,
coming
no
up
one's
to me in
talking
the
about him.
street.
That's why, like, even that's why when people were like, "Oh, Fury's the biggest star," clearly it's not because pay-per-view numbers doesn't back it. The interest in you're fighting for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. That's the biggest title in boxing. and no one cares about it. People were talking about who Joshua's fighting next, who he potentially could be fighting, instead of Fury Usyk. So it shows who the star is, but it's always been that way. No matter how much Fury wants to convince the fans, it's always been that way. Never been a big star.
No. I mean, marketing, it just shows you marketing. You don't have to be the champion to be like the biggest star, and you could be bigger than the belts from a financial perspective. I mean, I've got that security guard in supermarket asking me about Joshua and Ngannou, but no one is mentioning to me
Fury
Fury,
Usyk, innit?
Usyk. No one,
Yeah.
no one. It's like crickets.
Yeah.
So
And it
so
hasn't
yeah,
got long left. It's what, a month left. So if I'm Frank Warren, I better be doing some promotion, doing Premier League games to get that because I don't think people. Do you know what it is as well? Yeah, obviously Joshua Ngannou, right? That was actually on a Friday instead of a Saturday. Everyone knew that was on a Friday. They knew what date it was. Fury Usyk, no one could tell you if that when that date is. No one could be like, cool, that's in May. They'll be like, oh, is it happening? Oh, when is it? They don't know about it. So yeah, it's interesting.
it is, man. It is, and I can't wait to get into that with you. That fight is going to be crazy.
Yeah, man.
Um, but yeah, so make sure you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you stay locked in the channel. We got some big things coming your way soon. And with that, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so you get notifications when we come out with new content. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.